Hello, everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast. This audio podcast is part of a Bostix Series. This audio podcast is part of a LaBox Infaction. This audio podcast is part of a Storm Quota. This audio podcast as part of a Storm LaBostics production. In this audio podcast, now looking at sort of the material and methods or the methodology aspects of this drafted manuscript from 2023. So initially, the research team implemented a topic tagging activity wherein topics between two social media platforms were co-developed, having understood the aims and the remit of the platforms. Topic tags or tags were co-developed against 14 different topics, having extensively investigated over between March and April 2020. Between March and April 2020, the most popular terminologies. Topics were tagged for 2 weeks per social media platform, i.e., 2 weeks or 2 weeks on one social media platform and 2 weeks on a secondary social media platform. One social media platform representing adult nephrology cohort, and a second social media platform representing a pediatric nephrology cohort. Topic tagging sought to help understand what themes of renal healthcare are visited and most popular in social media platforms or through social media platforms, and where patients between the two social media platforms would find health professional involvement further supportive. Administration teams between the pediatric and adult and the adult social media the social media platforms had been pinned as sort of features at the top of respective platforms, so that service users could, number one, complete surveys through a link or a URL for part through a link or a URL, and and two, where participants could find out more information regarding the research. Participants were only invited to complete the survey once, and descriptive analysis was then utilized to analyze data. Software utilized at the time was Qualtrics, Qualtrics software, which was utilized to describe and analyze data and to help identify what needs to be met in the care between pediatric and adult patients. Social media leads social media leads between through the social media platforms, posted investigators access to posted investigator access to platforms, and how service and how service users share experiences, and subsequently also provided a link to both platform disclaimers regarding the remit and focus on CKD or chronic kidney disease. Now, at the same time, as per other works and any works in context of academia or research, there was a process through an ethics approval process. So this work had undergone both academic and NHS or National Health Service ethics approval process, highlighting all aspects of research. The UK General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR 2018 guidelines, were also implemented to ensure best practice surrounding confidentiality, data protection, and compliancy. Information sheets and consent forms were produced to inform participants the intentions and outcomes. All participant data have been collected outside the academic institution and housed on a secure server with firewall protection. The research protocol, there was a for this works there was a research protocol ID or identification and identification details which link to the Northwest Greater Manchester South Research Ethics Committee, and members between both social media platforms were informed of topic tagging and survey implementation, and confidentiality would remain in the group within the social media platform, and primarily within the RPSG within the RPSG platform. As part of this activity, members between both social media platforms, however, were also informed topic tagging and confidentiality would remain within the social media platforms. Group disclaimers are also encouraged. Informed consent, where investigators signposted those amongst the social media platforms within the social media platforms details in regard to informed consent, and Department of Health guidelines additionally were consulted, i.e. The governance arrangements for research ethics committees 2021 sorry 2020 sort of guideline. Additionally, all members between social media platforms were informed to refer to were informed again to refer to group disclaimers, social media platforms disclaimers, and tagged topics. In around the General Data Protection Regulation 2018, also referred to as the UK GDPR, or UK GDPR, or the GDPR 2018, and since has been updated to the UK GDPR 2020. The two social media platforms are international platforms, and primarily working through a social media platform, or the underlying social media platform being Facebook. Facebook had updated its practice guidelines originally to GDPR, so thus although not in the manuscript, to iterate further that the GDPR guidelines were initiated in around 2018, and since Facebook had and since on during that time, or during between 2018 and 2020 or thereabouts, Facebook had updated its legislation or its works, so that the so that so that the so that so that so that the service users or users generally are utilizing Facebook or the social media platform, are aware that its guidelines link to that link to that of guidelines linked to Europe, that of guidelines linked to the UK, that of guidelines that link to the United States, and that of guidelines that link to sort of link to guidelines more globally. And at the same time, where both social media platforms have service users, primarily from the UK, also from Europe and internationally, and hence why, according to any services or goods, etc., the UK GDPR and EU GDPR had been applied. The RPSG and KDAS platforms are both at the same time, both primarily through closed Facebook groups, or closed Facebook platforms, and both platforms or social media platforms are for healthcare service users suffering with chronic kidney disease, or CKD. RPSG and KDAS are therefore covered under Facebook's data privacy and protection policy. The UK GDPR 2020 prompts consistent data protection rules across the EU, but also more sort of across the EU in context of the EU GDPR, but also in line to the UK GDPR and according to the legislation wherein Facebook had initially been founded from, i.e., the United States. The UK GDPR 2020 had been in effect, sort of more recently, but links to the UK GDPR from 2018, which was launched into on the 25th of May 2018, and applies to organizations again in the EU, as well as companies around the world who provide or offer goods or services, and who process data from or about people in the EU, etc. In keeping with the UK GDPR, the research team had not reported any personal identifiable data, or PID, any personal identifiable data, i.e., names, dates of birth, addresses, and/or locations of participants. The GDPR and data protection guidelines were adhered to and applied throughout. Now, in regard to in around some of the recruitment aspects of this works. The investigating team sought to collect quantitative data between two surveys implemented from around January 2020 and September 2020 to help understand how services for patients could be enhanced through social media platforms or online spaces. A target sample was implemented to seek around 100 responses between CKD patients and allied health professionals through the RPSG and KDARS platforms. The manuscript, or the drafted manuscript, information, or includes information in regards to the two social media platforms accordingly, and topic tagging aspect, or activity as part of this work have been used in research carried out by authors of works in 2005, and in works by an author in 2021. That draws this audio podcast to a close. This audio podcast as part of a Bostix series. This audio podcast as part of a LaBox Infaction. This audio podcast as part of a Storm LaBostics production. And this audio podcast as part of a Storm Quota.